Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Panzer in the Works with yours truly, Panzer Bros.
And the historic hippos.
And today, if you haven't seen the title, which you probably have, but today it is Pacific Rim, the 2013 one, not the new one. We don't talk about the new one. But
At least, well, not yet at least, but yeah,
yeah,
we'll be sticking with the first movie.
we'll be sticking to the original film with if you don't know what it is, which some people may not, it's a giant robot movie which the point of them is to punch giant monsters in the face. That's kind of what I've managed to gather from it. Originally released in 2013, and the point is giant monsters, kaiju, which is the Japanese name for all the giant monsters which come to destroy cities, appear, and humanity builds giant robots to fight them, with each giant robot being a Jaeger. I forgot what it means, but
It's a German word meaning hunter.
there you go. Thank you. And the point
In
is,
fact, they even spell out the definitions to you at the very beginning of the movie.
oh yeah, yeah. So it's very nice. Very nice they did that, and it's not. It doesn't take up too much time the intro, so that's also nice as well. But yeah, the point is, there's two people connected by a neural bridge, which every single time they connect shows a bit of their memories or whatever, and only certain people can have a neural passage between them. So generally, like family members or people who are incredibly close, and one person generally can't. And I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And the first section, of course, we go over is the characters, which the characters may not be the most developed thing in the world, but they're there, which the show they do what they need to do, and only to be a background to the overall giant fighting scenes in Hong Kong or whatever. Which personally, each Jaeger is a character in its own right. Each one has a personality. And I've noticed some of the characters chosen, some of the people who play them, have either been considered or are actors from the Hellboy movies because it's the same director, so you can see some overlap.
Yes. Guillermo del Toro and the main character who plays Hellboy, Ron Perlman, also shows up in the movie.
Yeah, pretty much plays a similar-ish character, just without being from hell. But instead, he lives in a massive skeleton. But yes, the main characters: Riley Beckett, which is the main character of the film, the pilot of the Jaeger Gypsy Danger, which out of the Jaeger names, I view it the least in terms of coolness factor. It's good, but it's not as cool as the other ones.
Well, I think I heard somewhere like back in the concept development for the Jaegers, like in terms of designs, Del Toro said that the aesthetics of Gypsy Danger was from like World War II aircraft, specifically the American F-4U Corsair, whose engines were like made by de Havilland Gypsy or something.
Ah,
Hence Gypsy Danger's like blue like rugged appearance with like a bunch of vaulted metal on it.
yeah, you can definitely see a resemblance. Each one does take inspiration from something, although you can tell just by the general idea of just giant robots, they've taken inspiration from anime of previous times, but you can't say, oh, that one's based off that one. Each one is unique in in the entire field of giant mechs, which is very nice how they've done it. Another character, Stacker Pentecost, which is the commanding officer, former Jaeger
Played by
pilot.
Idris Elba,
Pardon?
the actor.
Is it?
Idris Elba, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I was apologies for maybe butchering so many different stuff, but it's but yeah, the commanding officer and former Jaeger pilot, which I think he did play a part in one of the Thor films of being a guardian of the gate teleport thing. I need to watch those films again, but continuing on.
This we should have said this before, but expect spoilers.
Oh yeah, It's a general idea of all of these, but yeah, expect lots of spoilers from beginning to end because we'll be talking through the entire story a little later on as well. But yes, what is and also is said probably halfway through it is Makomori, which the former the last mentioned character adopted in the middle of a massive fight between a Jaeger and a kaiju, which was done very well, I have to say, that scene, and ends up being also ends up with Beckett in Gypsy Danger for some of the fights as well, like the Hong Kong scene and at the end part as well. Other characters which, of course, you have the pilots of the Jaegers, but the only two characters which I think are unique and very good in a way, or most of the comic relief, but are the two scientists. And I will try and pronounce their names, but I fear I'll butcher them massively. Geisler and Gottlieb or something.
Newton Geisler. Yeah, everyone just calls him Mute.
Yeah, the scientists which are supposed to be researching into kaijus and whatnot, but I find them more comic relief, and they have their own little side story as well, where they meet the guy who played Hellboy.
Oh yeah, Hannibal Chow.
Yeah, Hannibal. It's interesting how they've done it in terms of how in this universe, because the war has been going on for pretty much 7 years, and how it integrated. It seems to be like a part of the city is a skeleton of a kaiju, and they've somehow built around it. Although the fact that the blood is poisonous to humans.
Or at least like it's very like poisonous to the environment.
Yeah.
And speaking of characters, we should not forget that there are other Jaeger pilots. Although unfortunately, most of them are treated as more like background characters that barely have like lines or character development, with
Yeah.
the exception of the Striker Eureka pilots, who are like supposed to be the Australian Jaeger.
Yeah, you could easily miss the fact that they're Australian. I didn't find their accents too good, but I know it was still a pretty cool Jaeger anyway. In which would bring us on to the Jaegers, in which, especially for the other Jaegers apart from Gypsy Danger, you kind of know more about the Jaegers than the actual people who pilot them, apart from Striker Eureka. Like, of course you have Gypsy Danger, the main one. Crimson Typhoon, which has 3 arms and 3 pilots. And I do believe it's Chinese. It's like red and it's got like a single eye as a head.
Yeah, it's a Chinese Mark IV Jaeger.
Cherno Alpha, which is my personal favourite one. The Russian one. It's the only Mark one, which you can either perfectly fits Russian. It looks Russian. It's big, green. Everything about it seems old and menacing, and it's my personal favourite Jaeger. Especially one particular scene where it charges up to a kaiju and there's like some Russian music playing in the background. It fits very well.
And then, like as I mentioned before, you have Striker Eureka, which is the Australian Mark V Jaeger, and in the Pacific Rim universe, the first and only Mark V Jaeger at the time.
Yeah, which has chest-mounted like cannons, and is I think it's one of the first fully electric ones, because like Gypsy Danger was nuclear powered. I'm not sure about General Alpha. I think that's nuclear as well.
We can explain about the whole EMP plot point later.
Yeah, the people. Yeah.
And there is another Jaeger that I believe was shown in promotional artwork, but only got a cameo in the movie. It was the Japanese Jaeger, Coyote Tango, which is a Mark One, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was in a news feed or something when
it was in the flashback when Stacker saves Mori.
Oh yeah,
The other Jaeger you see in the news clips at the beginning of the movie are like other Jaegers that exist and have been made, but never really elaborated upon in the movie itself. You have to read the comic books or the books for big picture of what really went on in the entire universe
Yeah,
outside of the movies.
yeah, in which encouraged to for anyone interested in Pacific Rim to go through them because there's a lot of good stuff going on there. There's a lot of different Jaegers. It goes through the history behind the Jaegers. It explores a lot more in their fights because, well, for pretty much all of these, you only see one or two fights with each Jaeger. Here, it's a lot more fights. It displays all their fights, not just some of them and how they're destroyed. Yes, I think it wraps up for characters that for well the most important characters, the most noticeable ones. Go on to setting, which well, I'd say it's based in the modern day. It's modern day when it came out because it's supposed to be 2013 and then it skipped to 2020, I think. It's around 2020ish when the main events of the film
I
proceed.
think the prologue begins in 2015. It's like I'm pretty sure it was like it took place in the same around the same year that the movie might have been released. But
Yeah, it's about I think about 2013ish, which when the yeah so when the great uh, yeah the rift appeared and yes although because it rift in the middle of the Pacific Ocean you expect quite a bit of setting to be out at sea in which a decent chunk of it is. The first scene is well the first scene with kaiju fighting Jaegers that's in a sea. There's a fight just outside Hong Kong. That's in the sea. The final bit with the next to the rift, that's in the sea. The only bit
underwater, but
in
yeah, whatever.
underwater, yeah. But the only real fight and big fight which isn't in the sea is in the middle of Hong Kong, which is done very well. It's because usually with this kind of stuff they would be all dim, dark, and only show a part of it just to save a budget. So no, we have here's Hong Kong, here's everything brightly coloured, and here's the full Jaeger. Which is
Uh, there's another fight involving Jaegers that occurs like mostly through like a live news podcast, but it shows Striker Zuka fighting and killing another kaiju in broad daylight.
yeah, it's one of these artistic designs I really do enjoy about this film because, on comparison to I think it's the 2015 that Godzilla film,
Sequel.
that Godzilla film.
Oh, the no wait the I think that was 2014. The
Yeah,
Godzilla film.
yeah, that didn't do it. That didn't do it well because within about 2.5 hours of Godzilla, there was about 15 minutes of Godzilla, and of what you saw of Godzilla, there wasn't much of Godzilla there. You only saw parts of it or shrouded in smoke or whatever. Here, completely opposite. We have the
Well,
entire thing.
I've heard some people complain that a majority of the Jaeger fights took place in the dark environment, like um, Jeffrey Danger. The beginning of Jeffrey Danger's fight against Knifehead took place at night. Same thing with the Hong Kong fight. Even if Hong Kong itself was brightly lit, it was still like kind of at night. And when they fight around the rift, it was like underwater where it was like dark.
Yeah, I understand for the other ones, but I'm not sure about the Hong Kong one because it's in the middle of Hong Kong. Granted, it's nighttime, but there's lots of lights. It's very colourful. There's lots of stuff going on. It's well compared to other fights, it's a lot brighter. Although it isn't like as bright as the daytime fight one done in the newsfeed, but it's still done very well. Just because it doesn't. If it can show an entire Jaeger or an entire kaiju, it will show the entirety of them. It won't shroud them in smoke or whatever. It might be a bit dark, but it will show as much as possible in that instance compared to other films of a similar thing.
Anyways, I think we've kind of deviated off a little too long. The setting, the actual setting itself is, like somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a interdimensional portal opens up and giant monsters start coming out and start wrecking cities along the coast.
Well,
And yeah,
yeah. What
pretty
else is
much like
supposed to do?
yeah. And then in response, the all the nations that border the Pacific Ocean band together to form the Pan Pacific Defense Corps and decide to build giant robots to fight the giant monsters that come out.
Yeah, it's well, as the honest trailer puts it, building giant monsters to punch them in the face, which they do quite often.
And as the prologue shows, the Jaegers were definitely highly successful because they were killing kaiju's left and right. And like there's one scene where like they're put on parades, the pilots are being interviewed like celebrities, and then all of a sudden like the kaiju start getting stronger and more Jaegers start getting killed, and eventually like the United Nations decide that the Jaegers are not the ideal solution anymore, and that they decide a better solution would be to just build a wall around the entire Pacific Ocean.
We're going to build a wall, make the kaiju pay for it. Yeah, it's interesting how they've set about the building of a wall, in which the main character Beckett does actually become a part of like a wall construction as well.
Yeah, but I imagine that like after he was the pilot of Jesse Danger, but he also had a older brother who was his co-pilot. And one fight in the beginning, he Raleigh lost his brother, and I guess he considering that the pilots require a neural drift to in order to pilot the Jaeger, Raleigh felt not only his arm getting ripped off, but also his brother dying. So I imagine that took quite an emotional toll on him.
And then somehow continued walking for a little bit and then flopped over, which is impressive because it does require two people. And the amount of strain it is on one person, which is shown in the prologue as well. Of just this is why there has to be two pilots. So yeah, that would have taken a massive toll of them, and hence why he ends up working on the walls until in,
Although Pentecost like comes find him, like picks him up and like says like of all the 20 plus Jaegers that humanity had at the Jaeger program's golden age, they're now reduced to like four Jaegers and one base to work from.
in the middle of Hong Kong. So they would go to Hong Kong after I think it was around Australia that wall was breached. And the strike Eureka as mentioned before, the Australian one
Yeah,
manages to destroy it in broad daylight.
and and basically like because the Jaeger program is effectively like dead, Pentecost decides that he's going to use whatever he has left to try to like uh, block the rift, whatever it takes. And that's where the two scientist characters comes in, like because one of them Gottlieb, I think his name was.
Yep.
He's a mathematician, and he says that the optimal solution is, well, he says like the situation is that the rift is getting stronger and stronger, which means that more and more powerful kaiju are going to come out at a faster rate until two are going to pop out at the same time. But he says that he predicts that at that time it will be an ideal opportunity to drop a nuclear bomb in the rift to close it for good.
In which
And that's initially the plan they go with.
after losing all but two of their Jaegers, which I wish that fight went on for a little bit longer with all four of them, but we got what we got.
Circumstances had something to say about that. And the other scientist, Newt, he's a biologist, and he tries to argue that he could drift, basically like hook himself neurally with a kaiju brain that he has in his lab, and try to like use that to gain knowledge on what is on the other side of the rift and how to best effectively close it. And even though he was denied, he still goes through with it anyways, and find out that kaiju are not feral monsters, but rather they're actually weapons of some aliens who regularly open portals to other worlds and tries to like destroy it, take it over for resources.
Yeah, there is actually a very in-depth story in this, but it's kind of overthrown by the whole action of it. But if you do go into detail, there is a good story, and it does actually go quite well. And then at the end, they blow it up with
Yeah, but not before all the Jaegers are destroyed.
which is a shame. So at the end of it, there's no Jaegers left, but then they continue on to make more ones. But although
That's a sequel.
it's although the fact that it's completely impractical making giant robots, it's still pretty cool, and it's still really cool that they actually decided we're going to make this and we're going to have giant robots in it to fight, and they actually do it in a realistic way. In terms of you can actually feel how heavy they are, and They actually and their movements are realistic.
Oh yeah, Del Toro. Basically the cockpit of every Jaeger is some like big room where the pilots are hooked up to like machines that actually where they actually have to like mimic the motions of the Jaeger.
Yeah, so like one person controls one half, the other person controls the other. Hence why it has to be two people.
And he Del Toro even stated that he intentionally made it so that the Jaegers are not motion captured
Ah,
because having them be motion captured would make them move too naturally, like with like in his words, I think with too much grace. Because again, Jaegers are like building-sized giant robots.
yeah, and I think it's definitely showed in some of the Jaegers because some of them granted do move a bit quicker than the other ones. But say like for Tuner Alpha, every single movement feels like it's not primitive, but it's old. It works to its. I don't know how to describe it, but it feels you can tell by its movements and it feels the oldest one there. It's very mechanical, but for the like newer ones like Striker Eureka, it does have more human motion, but it's still very big and it still moves quite slowly. And the fact that Crimson Typhoon can turn its waist other way around as well, which was done quite cool as well.
The background material states that oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the background materials that the movies don't show. For example, it says that Crimson Typhoon is able to incorporate actual martial arts or like actual kicks, but the movie doesn't show that.
Yeah, because it's a shame because the only fight or Crimson Typhoon and Tuner Alpha are involved in is in the middle of the ocean, so well, waist high, while two Jaegers end up destroying them.
To
Just
kaiju, you mean?
yeah,
But yeah, basically their debut in the film, they get killed.
yeah, it's a shame because I wish there was a bit more of the other Jaegers. Granted, we want to cheer for the main characters, but we're here to see. Well, personally anyway, here to see giant robots fighting giant monsters. We want to see as many robots as possible fighting these giant monsters, while not being too oversaturated. I think that's what this film does right. It has granted quite a bit of action and whatnot, but it's not too oversaturated in any certain area. It because it's a giant robot film. It focuses on it does have a decent chunk on the giant robots. Like how a good example of not how to do it is like the Bayformers, the Transformers by Michael Bay, which focus too much on the human characters and then focus too little on the actual Transformers, which it doesn't work at all because we're trying to watch giant robots. Give us the giant robots. Here, it gives us the giant robots, and it does it personally really well. In which, well, unfortunately, so if we give the director of this film, put him into Transformers, it will be brilliant because the director is just really good at what he does. But yes, moving on to music, which I did discover. Ramin Djawadi, I probably butchered that completely, but it's the same guy who did the music for Game of Thrones,
Uh,
which well, he knows what he's doing. So, and the music does fit incredibly well with, especially with certain parts. Like there's certain music which become very iconic, and there's some parts which, if you hear it again, you know exactly what it is. Like the theme for the film,
yeah,
that is incredibly good. Although, if you try and watch it on YouTube, it's copyrighted in certain countries, unfortunately. And as I mentioned before, some of the Jaegers they have their own music as well, like Tuner Alpha, where when it starts charging at one of the kaiju, there's some old Russian music starts playing, which gives some depth into what this Jaeger is about. I don't think other Jaegers have as much as a theme, really.
um, there's Jiffy Danger has its own theme.
Yeah, it's of course because it's the main Jaeger, but I don't think the other ones have as much as a musical impact. But especially Tuner Alpha and Gypsy Danger, they definitely do. Uh, But yeah, overall the music is really good, although most of it seems to be more background stuff, you don't really notice it, but when the music needs to kick up a gear and become noticeable, it does, and it does it well. So hats off to the guy who did Game of Thrones music. Uh, for improvements, as I said, it does it quite well, but I think
Give Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon more screen time.
yeah, I gave him more screen time because, granted, it's nice seeing the main characters, well, killing the kaiju, but at the end of the day, it's two arms, two legs. It's what you expect from a giant robot. So if you displayed a bit more about Crimson Typhoon, because as you said, like with the martial arts and it's like with the three arms, it would be very interesting of its fighting style, or like the Striker Eureka with the chest cannons, or Cherno Alpha with more rugged and slow and heavy hits, especially with the arms and whatnot. It's
Especially since like supplement background material also states that Cherno Alpha has Tesla coils built into its fists.
well, there you go. It's just a giant Tesla tank after all, but it's yeah. If they just showed a little bit more of these stuff, which is in the comics, it's there. It's the information's there. If they just showed a little bit more of that, it would have been personally it would have been even better. But if you do more of that, you either have to extend the screen time or you lose a little bit with the characters, in which they were reasonably weak, but they did, as I said before, they do what they need to do. So if they need to, you feel sympathy for some of them, you feel anger towards the main antagonist, which is the striker you can one for a bit of it. You feel sadness, happiness when you need to, but I wasn't hugely connected with really any of the characters really. But
Oh, I guess you kind of have to like look deeply if you really want to like analyze the characters. But yeah, I guess I can kind of see your point.
yeah, it's although at the end of the day, it's a giant monster film with giant robots in it. It's not serious. It's got there's some serious parts in it, but it knows what it wants to do. So, having more time on the characters and developing them more would have been nice, but I think it would have driven away with a little bit of what it was actually supposed to be. Granted, there is a certain anime and whatnot which does this combination extremely well. Gundam completely comes to mind immediately, but I don't know if it's you could you either do not a huge amount of characters and a lot of robots, which this is what it's done, or you can balance it extremely well, but it's incredibly hard to do. So I think here they went for the best option they could, which was we have equal time or roughly equal times with each one and develop each one enough so everyone's happy. But yeah, if you go into detail, there are multiple character arcs, and especially for the scientists, they have their own subplots. But yeah, it does what it needs to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Anything you want to add for improvements?
Well, I think we pretty much covered it. I suppose.
Ah, marvelous. And for conclusion, as I was saying before, it's a film with giant mechs fighting giant monsters. It knows what it wants to do, be incredibly cool and awesome. It does it. It does that. It does it what you want it to do, which was actually show the giant robots fighting. There's not much else really to say. Really, it's a really good blockbuster in which the CGI is brilliant. The designs of the Jaegers are really good. The overall fights are pretty good. Just wish some of them had a bit more screen time. End scene was pretty good, and they actually avoided a trope which I found quite good. Was that because usually at the end of the story, of course, the main characters, one being a male, one being a female, of course, it's like they've had spent most of the film together. They expect them to kiss or something, but at the end they don't. So they've gone against a trope which is usually done with this kind of film, although to show a really good happy ending. It's still a happy ending, but it's
You can thank Del Toro for noticing and averting that trope.
yeah, he's a really good director. If you see his name on a film or show or whatever, you know it's going to be good. And this is one of them. It's granted some people didn't like it just because it was a bit. I'm not sure why, but it was. Some people just didn't like it just because it's starring Robert. It's incredibly dumb or whatever. But if you do look a little bit into it, there's a good story kicking in, and if you're really interested in how about the Jaegers and that, as we mentioned before, there is the comics and books which expand on this universe, create even more. And as of making this episode, there's a sequel out which I have not yet seen, but I have not heard good reviews on. Partly because Del Toro had to work on other projects and they've adjusted it so a bit more consumerist. But I think that's a topic for another day when I eventually watch it. And I'm not sure if you've watched it either.
And oh yeah, I almost forgot. Del Toro was apparently a fan of certain Valve games such as Portal, and even asked Ellen McLean to do her GLaDOS voice as the Jaeger AI.
Ah, now if they just did that, then this would be a masterpiece. It's this is really good, but having that would just make it better. But unfortunately, it's not how it was going to be.
Well, it's not perfectly like GLaDOS voice, but it's close. It's close enough.
Yeah, it's granted. Yes, if it may not just have line by line exactly the same, but I had to have something like that. I think would have. I don't know. I think it would have made it slightly better, but some people may have disagreed. But I think of what it did of it when it was made, it did it very well. There's not much to improve on it except spending a lot more money into it and doing more of the Jaegers. But apart from that, there's not a huge amount to change really. If other films of a similar type would follow more this structure, then I think those films would become greater. And I think that wraps it up. Anything else you want to add?
Um, yeah, I guess like there's like one particular theme about throughout the movie that I guess I could cover. So
Sure.
like if you like bother to look past the whole giant robots fight giant monsters thing, you'll find that there's like a particular consistent theme of like working together as a team or family, because it's noted that it's established from the beginning that every Jaeger needs at least two pilots who are willing to who connect to the Jaeger and each other neurally, which means that they have to like be able to trust each other, know what the partners are going to do or thinking, that kind of stuff, in order for the Jaeger to operate efficiently. And you'll notice that all the Jaeger pilots are either family members, siblings, married couples, or yeah, with the exception of Jiffy Danger, because Raleigh and Mako just know each other that well apparently.
I call it plot armor.
And it's also mentioned that the kaiju also have multiple brains, so it's like the kaiju brains are also operating the kaiju's like a Jaeger.
So it's literally it's not one's greater than the other. They're actually quite reasonably equal, apart from one's constantly upgrading and the other one is got the power of teamwork.
And speaking of teamwork, yeah, basically the whole movie was about like the multiple nations, nationalities teaming up to like defend humanity. So you have America teaming up with China, Russia, and Australia and Japan. And not only is that also like a consistent like theme, applies to the consistent theme of like like working together. It's also worth noting that it applies in a meta sense. You have Del Toro, who I think is from Mexico, directing a movie that is pretty much a love letter to the Japanese genre of giant robots. With the movie will be produced by Americans, and the music was composed by um, Ramen,
I,
that guy whose name you can't pronounce. I heard that he's German.
okay, that works. Okay, that That might explain a couple of things, but yeah, go on.
So yeah, multiple nations working together also applies into the movie in a meta sense.
Yeah, I think one thing I was genuinely surprised now because although yes, we're very more Americans now, I expected a bit more American characters or just more American Jaegers or something, but no, they stuck to one, and they've gone for other ones which you don't generally expect, like Chinese and the Russians and the Australians. Granted, because they have coasts in the Pacific, but especially for the Chinese and Russians, and quite a few films are depicted as the bad guys, but here they're actually the good guys, which kind of goes against quite a few people, or quite a few other films as well. But yeah, I think that wraps it up. Uh, there's a final conclusion because all that was the conclusion, which lasted a long time. But if you haven't watched, as I said before, if you haven't watched it. If you like giant robot films, you're gonna love this. If you just like a good blockbuster, perfect. Just if you want to look into it, it's got a decent story, but don't expect an absolute masterpiece. And yeah, just really good fight scenes, really, along with decent characters and very good lore, which uh, I will have to start reading through at some point to explore the universe behind it. And I think that pretty much covers it. I have been Panzer,
And I'm Historic Hippos.
and thank you for watching slash listening. Congratulations if you've got this far. Uh, if you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments. But please do bear in mind, me and Historic Hippos have had to either watch it, play it, or etc. To actually talk about it, because there's no point talking about something where we don't know a huge amount, as followed from all of these. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you haven't watched the other ones, please watch them and take care.